The Avalon, an interstellar spacecraft, is seen navigating across the vastness of space en route to Homestead 2, a new habitable planet for humans to live on. The spacecraft is now operating autonomously, with all of its compartments vacant, and is under the supervision of an automated system. Currently, the 258 staff members and the 5,000 passengers are in hibernation. Suddenly, the spacecraft passes into an asteroid belt, resulting in the degradation of its defensive shields. The power is being rerouted to the main shield system, but the spaceship is now on a course that will lead to a collision with a massive asteroid. Surprisingly, the asteroid collides with the ship, leading to several malfunctions. The ship initiates self-repairs, but one of the hibernation pods becomes active. The passenger who has regained consciousness is Jim Preston, a mechanical engineer. Upon the activation of his pod, an automated apparatus assists in his awakening, notifying him that he has experienced 120 years of suspended animation and that the spaceship is just 4 months away from reaching Homestead 2. He has been notified that he will have the chance to use the luxurious facilities of the ship during that time. Jim is given details on his ID band, cabin, and the primary tasks he must do before arriving on the planet. Experiencing a mix of excitement and unease, he readies himself, leaves his cabin, and enters an automated classroom specifically created for a collective learning group. Jim is feeling anxious as the hologram explains the current situation on Earth, portraying it as overly populated, excessively costly, and extremely overestimated. The rules explicitly direct him to withhold his queries until the course's end. However, Jim continues to query the rationale of his isolated presence. Upon seeing the hologram's lack of responsiveness, he starts to search for other people. He reaches the ship's center region. Although there are no individuals currently present, there is an automated information desk that may provide help. Jim seeks to initiate a dialogue with someone, but instead he is instructed to interact with a steward. However, after seeing that there is no one there, he continues to seek a conversation with the captain. Upon arriving at the bridge, despite not having authorization to enter, he notices that none of the main crew members are awake. Jim eventually reaches the observatory and learns that the spaceship is really 90 years away from Homestead 2. Realizing that he woke up too early, he promptly heads back to the concourse and sends a message to Earth. The communication system informs him that the excessively expensive call to Earth would take about 55 years to get a response. He casually walks about and finds the bar on the ship, where he comes into contact with another person. During the conversation with the bartender, there is a distinct sense of strangeness about him. While retrieving a drink, Jim has the epiphany that he is an android. Its name is Arthur. Jim wants to get further information from the robot. After waking up, Jim goes to the cantina in his cabin and quickly realizes that most of the things on the menu are only available for guests in the gold-class passengers. He acquires his plain coffee and strives to ascertain the method for fixing his hibernation chamber. After acquiring all the essential apparatus, he effectively activates the pod and assumes a reclined position within. Nevertheless, there are no occurrences or activities taking place. Consequently, he chooses to use the device he found to gain entry into the crew's sleeping chambers. That is also inefficient. Incidental malfunctions arise on the vessel. Jim mostly visits the pub to converse with Arthur, although he also imbibes alcoholic drinks. The robot convinces him to illegally enter one of the rare gold-class compartments and engage in leisure activities on the ship. Jim thoroughly evaluates all the dining establishments, recreational activities, and entertainment infrastructure. Nevertheless, with time, his solitude intensified his suffering. One day, he falls drunk and wanders without purpose in the vicinity of the sleep pods. By chance, he enters an airlock that contains spacesuits designed expressly for activities outside of a spacecraft. Jim dresses in formal attire and moves towards the airlock, where he manipulates a lever and then punches a button to trigger the opening of the airlock door. Jim disengages the magnets on his boots and experiences weightlessness in space, feeling overcome with pain. He re-enters the premises, removes the suit, but then returns to the airlock without wearing it. He pulls the lever, prepared to end everything, but has a change of heart at the last second, runs back indoors, and loses his balance on a bottle. Jim rises from his seat and is instantly charmed by a woman named Aurora, who is placed in one of the pods. He methodically analyzes the directory to discover her documents and closely listens to her passenger interview. At the bar, he is perusing her literary works and engaging in a chat with Arthur about her writing. He becomes hooked on the irony of his predicament. Journeying to another planet in pursuit of a better life, Jim continually contemplates her and starts to explore the possibility of rousing her as well. He discusses it with the robot, but he fails to understand the dilemma. If he rouses her from sleep just for his personal gain, he would be leaving her stuck on the vessel with him, eventually leading to her death. Initially, Jim opts not to pursue it, but over time, he becomes unwilling to surrender it. However, one day, he transforms his outlook. He walks to her pod and successfully activates it. While she is awakened and completing the same process that he did, he hides himself and returns to his room. Shortly later, he heads to the main concourse in the hopes of discovering her. And there she is, as bewildered as he was 12 months ago. Jim assures her that they are the only ones who are awake and brings her to the observatory. He tells her that he is unable to access either the crew or the primary commands of the spaceship. Aurora feels anxious and wants to rejoin her pod. Upon arriving, Jim elucidates that the spaceship lacks any specific technology to ease their re-entry into sleep, effectively imparting the message that they are marooned. They return to the concourse, where he urges her to rest as she has just come from hibernation. Jim returns to the pub, feeling regret for his conduct. He implores Arthur to resist notifying Aurora that he was the one responsible for awakening her from sleep. On the following day, Aurora wakes. She returns to the concourse and inquires at the automated information desk about the hibernation pods. Jim joins her at the place, and together they proceed to enjoy breakfast. While in the cantina, Aurora becomes aware that Jim has been consuming the same breakfast for over a year. Consequently, she procures one of the gold-class meals for him. The conversation centered around the prospect of fixing the pods, but, unlike Jim, Aurora is not willing to surrender. She painstakingly explores the hospital, extensively studies research data, and finally comes to the crew's hibernation quarters, trying to violently open the doors. Jim detects an increasing number of flaws appearing throughout the ship. After a long time, Aurora confesses her tremendous regret and grief about her life on the Avalon. She participates in writing, engages in running around the ship, and engages in swimming in the pool, gradually obtaining a heightened awareness of her environment. She goes to the cantina with the goal of interviewing Jim, hoping that his tale may be compelling. She inquires about the cause of his arrival at the colony. Initially, Jim reacts by repeating the company's slogans, but later elaborates on his ambition to develop his identity and make a satisfying living in the new world. Subsequently, they go to the observatory, where Aurora finally explains her motive for being there. Contrary to the other passengers on board the vessel, she had a ticket that permitted passage to and from the location. Her plan involved remaining on Homestead 2 for a year and afterward returning to Earth, with the objective of becoming the pioneering journalist to complete such a feat. Her purpose was to chronicle the most astounding account ever recounted. Aurora progressively abandons her quest to find a solution to their current situation, while Jim devises a plan to elevate her spirits. He accompanies her to dancing, movies, and the basketball court. Finally, he brings her to the bar to present her to Arthur. She temporarily unwinds but quickly recollects their plight. Jim is left alone with the robot, feeling tremendous sorrow for his crimes against her. Shortly on, he is seen engrossed in tinkering as Aurora enters the observatory and finds a scaled-down model of the Chrysler building that he had made specifically for her. After a length of time, they reunite in the bar for a date. They join in a lunch and swap experiences about their own lives. Following the meal, Jim accompanies Aurora to the airlock, where they continue to don their spacesuits. They embark on a combined spacewalk. Jim deactivates the magnets on their boots, allowing them to float together in the emptiness of space. Upon re-entering the grounds, they immediately engage in a passionate kiss, then head to his cabin, where they indulge in intimate activities and spend the night together. Shortly later, they started cohabitating as a couple. Aurora rests inside her cabin and narrates her activities on board the cruise. They participate in combined jogging, eating, and shared sleep. Jim proceeds to examine the ship and finds the hydroponics bay. He gifts Aurora with flowers. On a given day, the ship approaches a red giant star, and they proceed to the observatory in order to witness it. Later that evening, there is a celebration in one of the ship's restaurants, and then everyone goes to the bar. Jim walks to the toilet to collect the ring he designed for Aurora, while she stays in the bar with Arthur. The android tells Aurora that Jim purposely woke her, without comprehending that he planned to keep it a secret. Unexpectedly, Jim reappears, and she confronts him with full astonishment. She leaves in a condition of great wrath and panic. Jim goes to his cabin, only to find that all of her stuff has disappeared. During one evening, she enters Jim's cabin and physically beats him with punches and kicks, expressing a deep desire to cause his demise. Jim tries to reconcile with her by chatting over the phone, but she continues to elude him. He strives to apologize and explain his behavior to her. He declares his love for her, but Aurora stays indifferent. She has an angry attitude toward him for robbing her of her existence. On one evening, when Jim is inside his cabin, another failure happens. The spaceship faces a serious malfunction, resulting in the main command system discontinuing functioning. Subsequently, he enters the elevator and has difficulty. Aurora approaches the main concourse and notices that Jim has purposefully planted a tree in that spot. Subsequently, she travels to the cantina, where the food dispensary is also having a malfunction. Unexpectedly, they both sense the voice of the deck chief over the communication system, inquiring about the name of the person responsible for planting the tree. They both hurry onto the concourse and find Gus Mancuso positioned in front of Jim's tree. They introduce themselves and tell the leader about the existing conditions. He lacks understanding regarding the failure of 3 pods. Mancuso guides them to the bridge, where he finds an issue with the vessel. However, the ship's systems need to be examined manually to receive the correct information. On departing the bridge, a robot barely misses dropping onto their heads, leading the couple to notify Mancuso that problems had been happening with growing regularity over the entire ship. He says that such an incident should not occur, as he illustrates the method of data collection for them. Mancuso inspects the pods, and Jim joins him at that spot. He has identified the reason for the fault in Aurora's pod. The deck chief considers Jim's behavior repulsive. Subsequently, he is at the bridge, attentively reviewing the acquired data, when Aurora joins him. They discuss the circumstances affecting her pod, but he tells her that he is unable to take any action on it. Mancuso suffers signs of hibernation illness, causing him to seek rest. However, upon departing, he expels blood by coughing. Unable to fall asleep, Aurora decides to take a nocturnal swim. Unexpectedly, the ship experiences a lack of gravitational force, causing the individual to be submerged in water as it goes along with her. She just escapes with her life when the gravity drive undergoes a reset. They collide while searching for Mancuso. They have returned to the bridge and are gradually uncovering the events that have been occurring with the ship. Mancuso deduces that an incident occurred 2 years ago, resulting in the failure of a significant system. It is essential to identify and rectify the root cause of the malfunction, since the whole ship is now compensating for the deficiency. They proceed to investigate the issue, but Mancuso loses consciousness, prompting Jim and Aurora to transport him to the clinic. He is in a terminal condition with no available interventions to halt or extend his remaining lifespan. Mancuso gives Jim his identification bracelet, tells them to fix the spaceship, and then dies shortly after they gather at the observatory. As the ship begins to sway, the light suddenly turns an unsettling shade of red. After Jim tells Aurora he needs help, the two of them rush over to the engineering room. The gravity drive, though, gives them trouble again. On top of that, Arthur receives a hit from another one right away. Jim takes care of his own life. When they get to the engineering department, they immediately begin looking for the source of the problem. Once they find it inside the power plant, they unlock the hatch and see that Aurora has been dragged inside. A rupture in the hull has occurred in that particular place as a result of the asteroid. Jim finds himself entangled as well, but he tightens his grip on the hatch just in time as it encroaches on him. They quickly succeed in sealing the breach, but he too becomes stuck in the end. As soon as Jim fixes the previously described problem, he realizes there are several holes in the hull. They find out that the asteroid has hit the computer that controls the reactor as they follow its trajectory. Jim thinks he can get suitable replacement parts. Although they are able to identify and repair the defective part, the process of venting the reactor is still not effective. They try to accomplish it by hand, but it falls flat again. Jim figures out that to help cool the reactor, he has to go outside and open the vent door. They make their way to the airlock, and just before he steps outside, he gives Aurora Mancuso's bracelet, saying that he might not come back. She helps him put on the suit and begs him to come back as he goes through the airlock. She can't stand being on the ship alone. Now that the temperature has reached a crucial level, Aurora goes back to the reactor. Jim spots the door on his way to the vent from the outside, and then a bolt from the reactor smashes into her arm. The reactor chamber is becoming hotter as he tries to get in through the vent door. Upon realizing he must physically hold the door open for the reactor to expel its gases, he promptly tells Aurora of this fact. In spite of her reservations, he moves on with the plan and tells her to let the pressure out of the reactor. An argument ensues as she states her wish for him to remain alive. But he is certain that other people's safety must come first, so she lets the pressure out of the reactor. Jim is forcibly repelled, and his connection is severed by the emissions coming from the reactor. He is also feeling a reduction in pressure inside his suit. Aurora is immediately prompted to obtain another outfit and return at once he notifies her of the predicament. A second time, he tells her how sorry he is. She puts on her suit and starts a flight to get him, but her tether is too short. She steps back for a second before suddenly grabbing his tie and bringing him closer. After dragging Jim into the clinic against his will, Aurora learns that he has passed away. To save Jim's life, she takes advantage of his bracelet and skips over the medical procedures. Jim is revived thanks to the medical pod's automated performance of life-saving treatments. Aurora pardons him. They have a respectful space funeral for Mancuso after Aurora fixes Arthur. At the clinic, Jim explains his plan to convert the medical pod into a hibernation pod and takes her there. The rest of the journey will be completed inside the pod, he tells her. Nevertheless, it becomes clear that she declines and opts to stay on the ship with him, staying awake the whole time. In the end, Jim pops the question, and the happy couple spends their golden years on board. The Avalon spaceship docks at Homestead 2 after an 88-year journey. The crew finds the ship in a very unexpected state upon waking. As the rest of the crew slept, Aurora sent a message detailing what she and Jim had encountered during their time on the ship. Thank you for coming, and don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.